Take your crown, the meek shall rise from the ground. Trade broken hearts, a row of roses from the start. Life, love, life, love, life, love, and the way things ought to be.
Welcome to the show. This is the Morning After Show. We're that Christian-based television program that's dedicated to discussions about life and love and the way things ought to be. I am Minister Igola, your host for the evening. Now, we have with us this evening the author of Tootsie's Chick, Dr. Dorothy Arnold. She's going to give us an opportunity to reflect not only on her experiences during childhood or throughout childhood, but I promise you, if you go by this book, you're going to start to reflect on your own. So stay tuned. We're going to be right back. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you, Dr. Arnold, Dr. Dorothy Arnold, author of Tootsie's Chick. Nice to have you on the show.
Glad to be here.
Yes, indeed. And this is Tootsie's Chick. It is Life, correct me if I'm wrong with the title, Life Without a Mother, Tootsie's Chick. Yes, indeed. Get a careful shot of the book because I want you guys in the studio audience to go out and purchase this book. And we're going to tell you when we get ready to go off the air where you can purchase it. And I think that you're going to find that it's going to be more than a good read for you. It's going to be one of those books that you're going to read and you're going to reread. But as I said before, I fell in love with your book.
Oh, well, wonderful.
I did. I fell in love with a little girl in this book who was by herself. I felt her aloneness. I felt her desire to know and to be connected to something and somebody.
Yes.
I fell in love with this character.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. So tell me about it. What inspired you to write this book? Because this is autobiographical.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I mean, and it is really unfolding a lot about yourself and your life. So tell me, what inspired you to write it?
Actually, the inspiration came from my baby son, Daniel Arnold, who would always ask me about my childhood. For whatever reason, he was fascinated with his mom and how she grew up. Because I was always truthful with them about they knew their grandparents on their dad's side, but I told them that I did not know my dad, and my mom passed away before she could tell me who my dad really was. And so he was fascinated about how I would talk about my mom, what little I did know about her, and then how I would talk about my adoptive parents, Mary Harrison and Hurlis Harrison. So that was the first time. Then there was a friend of mine who is a prophetess, and she said, I see a book in you. And I went, yeah, right, sure. And the final time was at my church, Union Grove Baptist Church of Union City. John David Menifee is my pastor. We had a grief course, counseling, I guess you could say. And in that particular session, again, I was told to write the book. So I wrote the first chapter, leaving that session, and brought it back to the next session. They read it, and they were like, you're on to something. And I went, okay, right, sure. And so about 2 years ago, I was visiting my aunt, who's about 97, and I was there for her for what we call Easter weekend or Resurrection Sunday, and I just happened to be there with her, going to go to church with my cousin and enjoy Resurrection Sunday. Walked out, went down the steps, walked into the grass, fell.
Okay.
Both of my feet were in just excruciating pain.
Wow.
And my cousin was so afraid, she thought I was having a stroke or a heart attack. So she called for neighbors. We didn't want to alert my auntie because, you know, with her age and everything, we didn't want to upset her. So I began to say, God, not both feet. I knew it was my feet that were hurting. So the left feet subsided, but the right foot continued to just pain beyond my wildest dreams. So we went, nevertheless, we went to the emergency room. My cousin, who is an EMT, said, you're not going to be going back home on a plane. We're going to have to call your husband, Earl, to come and pick you up, and we need for you to see your orthopedic person as soon as you get home. So I'm still thinking, and here's your CD. So I'm still thinking I've just probably got a bad sprain or maybe even broken, but a cast will fix it. Well, I get home, get to the orthopedic guy, and he goes, I'll see you in surgery the next day.
Wow.
So I ended up breaking the bone. I still have the plate in the right foot, but the screw was removed. So I was, needless to say, for 6 months, I could not put any weight on my feet at all. So God set me down, laid me down, and said, you're getting ready to write this book.
And then out of you pours.
And out of me pours the book.
This book.
Literally, I would be laying up in my bed, and I would sit up because I had, you know, one of those little cushion things, and I would just lift the laptop, and it would just literally just flow out of my fingers.
So this is therapy for you.
It was therapy.
And tell me how it felt as you began to release, because this is a lot of pain,
Yes,
a lot of hurt and anguish
yes.
inside of this book. How did it feel to get it onto paper?
Actually, I felt relieved. It was like a weight. I felt light. Also, I can say that now I don't even allow negative energy in my space or directed at me at all. So there are some people who are in my life who have been accustomed to generating negative energy, and now they say that since I wrote the book that I've changed, and yes, I have changed, because I don't allow the negative words to come at me anymore. I stop you right away.
You, as a part of the book, this little girl received a lot of
A
that.
lot of negative energy, a lot of negative
Oh,
words,
wow.
a lot of, to the point that actually, believe it or not, there are features that I've just discovered in the last 2 or 3 years that I have, that I didn't recognize, that I did not even see.
Help me to understand what you're talking
Okay,
about.
for example, people tell me that I have beautiful eyes.
You do.
Well-
And your grandbaby has those same gorgeous, beautiful, doleful eyes.
I
yes.
see that, and especially I have to say Skylar. Her eyes, oh my God, she was with me just this weekend, and I just kept telling her how beautiful her eyes were. They're like just big, beautiful brown marbles, and they're gorgeous, but I never saw that in me because no one ever told me I had beautiful eyes.
Wow.
Then the other thing was the dimples. And I never really appreciated having dimples.
Because all of this negativity
Yes.
is generated around you. What I love about it, and you're gonna have to excuse me if I call you Doc, because that's what I know you as.
That's fine.
As Doc. But I think what really impacted me was that you were saying that as you started to pour this book, out of you, there was such a sense of release that you won't even allow negativity to go back in.
No, not
So
at all.
literally you stop it. Do
Yes.
you physically say, I'm not going to receive this? Or is this something that mentally you say, I'm not going to allow this to impact who I am? Because it's like you don't want to get that back inside of you.
I don't want to hear it because see, one of the things that I learned that if I hear it, and even as children, if they hear that, it penetrates.
Yes, indeed.
You hear that and it becomes a part of you, and that I don't know the word for it, but it becomes a part of you, and you begin to believe that's who you are.
Wow.
And so from the day of me actually writing and releasing all of the negative energy and all of those kinds of things, I don't let anyone talk to me negatively. Now, we may talk about problems, issues, challenges. I don't have a problem with that. But when you start to
Criticize.
criticize,
Put down.
put down,
Humiliate.
humiliate, I can't.
I won't receive
I
that.
won't. And I stop you right there.
Wow, won't allow it in your
I
spirit.
won't allow it in my
Now,
spirit. I won't allow it in my space.
okay, now let's be very, very candid and very honest here.
Okay.
In this book, because it is an autobiography,
Yes.
you're talking about real live human beings.
Yes, I am.
How was this book received by your family and friends? A lot of people have books inside of them, but they can't release them because they're afraid of the impact of their words on other people. Were you not concerned about that, or what? How did you overcome that fear?
Because God really said, you're going to write. And he put me in a place where I had no choice. Secondly, I knew within myself and believed that there were things that are in Tootsie's Chick that I was going to die with. It was I had resolved in myself that those things I would take to my grave.
Yes,
But
indeed.
God said not so. Because there are children and there are women out there who are listening, who have had the same kinds of experiences that I have had as far as emotional and verbal abuse. And it lives with you. For you hear that over and over again. The B word, and that you're black, and that you're this, and you're that, and you won't ever amount to anything. It was told to me that, I would have children and wouldn't know who my baby's daddies were.
Wow. Now,
things-
now, some of that you left out of the book.
Oh, yeah.
Because I ain't read any of that
No,
in
you
there.
didn't read
In fact, when I was reading through, I'm like, okay, now I see some heifers in here, and I
Yeah.
see, but it was much deeper
Much
than you
deeper.
even allowed or wrote about in the book.
I don't know what we can say on air, but if I would say, I'm going to give her benefit of the doubt, and say if I had a dime for every time I was called a bastard, I'd probably be a millionaire.
Wow.
Because I was called a bastard quite often. I was the only bastard in the house. My mother had me out of wedlock.
Yes.
She died when I was 3 years old. She was married, and she became pregnant by her husband, and she passed away in childbirth.
Wow.
And I never really got the true story of that, believe it or not, until I was pregnant with my own child, and my doctor sent for my mother's records and shared with me how my mom died. And she gave me a sense of release that I would be able to birth my child with no problems. Because she said the chance of you dying in childbirth like your mom did is the same chance of you walking out of my office and being hit by a Mack truck.
Wow. But these fears were a part of who you were. And it's interesting, I'm sitting there listening because I think it's only in this conversation with you, I'm getting a fuller sense of what you went through.
Right.
And but you held back on some of that truth.
You never tell it all.
Yeah.
You know?
Because you didn't want to injure, why did you hold some of it back?
I held some of it back because I knew I was going to injure family. You asked me earlier
Did
about
you?
how did they receive it.
Did they?
Yes. They were in denial. Other family members embraced it, and other family members were like, wow, we didn't realize that you went through that like that. My aunt, who is still alive, like I said, the elder aunt, and her daughter read it to her, and she finally opened up to her daughter and said to her daughter, you know what, it was a big mess when Tootsie died. That's my mother's nickname.
Yes.
It's a big mess in the family about Dot, as they call me,
Yes, indeed.
and who she was going to be with and who was going to raise her.
Right.
So it had my auntie to also, I think, resolve a lot of things that were going on with her, because after reading the book, her daughters began to ask her, why didn't you take her?
Yes, indeed.
Why did you allow her to go with this particular sister when you all know what kind of state of mind she has? So,
Yes, indeed. So a part of it was held back because it wasn't necessary to tell the whole
No.
in order to get the story,
Yeah.
get the story across. And you were saying that it will help some other women who look at you, Doc, and it's easy to look at you where you are now and think that you've never been through anything.
Wow.
But Tootsie's chicks say, yeah, walk a mile in my
It's
shoes.
true.
Yes, indeed. So you talk about in here, you know, how you were treated as a child. And that's one thing because that allowed a different perspective. But then you began to unfold some truths about yourself.
Right.
Truths that deal with, for instance, the abortion that was in here. Talk to us about your mindset, you know, after the abortion, because of course, us being members of the Christian community, biblically, we know that that is something that is not upheld in the Christian community. So talk to us about your mindset and how you freed yourself from the guilt of the abortion.
Initially, I knew I had to abort my baby because the young man whom I was pregnant by was like, whatever, I'm with you, whatever you want to do. But I knew, you know how you already know that this is not what they want and they're not ready for it? I knew it was not what I wanted because I was not ready for it. The only dad that I really knew that loved me said for me to finish school so that I could take care of myself. And so then I also understood that even if I had the baby and left the baby in this environment, this child would probably suffer the same things that I suffered. So I went through a lot of soul searching and all of that because I grew up in the church that it was forbidden to abort babies. It was, as a matter of fact, they said that God will forgive you for anything but self-murder. How did they come up with self-murder and abortion being one and the same? I don't know.
So you do this,
Right.
and you keep it this, you internalize it for years and years and years.
Oh, yeah.
How do you move beyond this to a point of freedom where you can write in a book and share it with the world?
Because one day, one evening, I could say, I was home alone with my firstborn child. PTL was on, Jimmy and Tammy Faye Baker, and they were talking about how God can forgive you for anything. And I was just boo-hoo crying and thinking, again, hearing those voices of you've murdered a child, you going to hell, you know, and all of that. And I called in on their prayer line, and I talked to the counselor, shared with the counselor what was going on with me, and he told me, sweetheart, God has already forgiven you. Forgive yourself.
Yes, indeed.
And at that moment, and I realized, and he took me to scripture and showed me where I was forgiven, and that there was nothing that I could do to separate me from his love, because you have to realize all my life I was separated
From love.
from people who loved me,
Yes.
and death.
Yes.
And so I need a moment.
It's okay. It's okay. You were separated from the people that loved you, and it's amazing. All of that separation, the abandonment is in this book.
Yeah.
And I often say that by our testimonies, well, the Bible says, by your testimonies you overcome. And I didn't quite understand that scripture for the longest time. But having experienced pain and hurt, I'm giving you a moment to compose you.
Thank you.
But experienced pain and hurt,
Uh-huh.
I understand now that our testimonies, when we hold them on the inside, this pain, this hurt, this guilt, this disillusionment, it causes damage forever.
Forever.
Forever and ever. But
Yes.
when you can articulate them,
Yes.
and I think that is the power of the word.
Yes.
The power of the word. When you
Exactly.
can articulate
Yes.
them and manipulate them enough to allow them to come out of your mouth and to be so bold as
Yes.
to put them on paper, you overcome. That thing no longer has the ability
Right.
to hurt you. You can tear up forever,
yes,
but
yes.
it doesn't have the power to cause the internal damage as it has in the past. So
Exactly.
I salute your boldness.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Especially when you start talking about your husband in here.
Yeah.
Okay, how did he receive this book? Because you unfold a lot of personal moments with your husband, including the abortion,
Right.
who was the father.
Father
Your
of the
husband was the father of the baby.
Yes.
So,
my husband loves me, and I love him. And I think when we say, how did he receive the book? He received the book because he allowed me to write it.
Yes,
And
indeed.
he knew that I was writing from my truth
Yes, indeed.
and from where I was. And he knew that he loved me enough, knowing that I needed to write this. Because actually, the book, I'm talking to my mom. Every little girl wants a mom
Yes, indeed.
that they can talk to, that they can tell her every little thing, you know. So that's basically what I'm really doing in the book. Is that's why it's entitled Tootsie's Chick.
Yes.
Because I'm saying to my mom, I'm having conversation with her that I was never allowed to have with her, that I felt like I was cheated or I was robbed to do. So in the book, I'm talking to her, and those things that I think are very important to me, those are the things that I'm talking to her about. And I'm asking her, did you see? Do you know? Because, you know, one of the things that I remember, even in the book, I say to her, you had to have seen my end
Yes, indeed.
for you to go on and be with the Lord.
Yes,
Because, I mean, you left this child just with these people.
Yes, indeed. And you felt abandoned by her.
Yes, I did.
Dying.
Yes.
Even though that was beyond her control.
Right.
You were still by yourself.
Yes. Because for the longest, as a child, I can remember this, as a child, I thought she did have control. Why did you choose to die?
Wow.
Because, you know, the story goes that she always said that she wanted to pass on before her mother did, because she would not be able to handle her mother's death. Well, it's even in the book that my mother died first, and then 3 weeks later, my grandmother passed away.
Right.
So in my mind, as a child, when I'm hearing this, if you didn't want to live without your mother, how did you expect me to live without mine?
Wow.
You know?
Wow. I got you. I got you. And I can see how the child's logic, you would think that. You know, you said something as you were discussing, as you were talking just now. You said your mom must have seen your end.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your end, because you are a mom and you are a grandma.
Yes.
How has Tootsie's Chick healed enough to play those roles and be grandma and to be mom? What do you do for yours that was not done for you?
I give them that love, the attention. We talk about it. As a matter of fact, my oldest and first granddaughter, when she saw the book and we talked about the book, she said that she wanted to write a book. So we started, you know, writing her little book. Well, you know, she was dictating to me and I'm typing. And she wants and likes for me to read parts of the book to her, and I do.
Yes.
She's not ready for some of the other later chapters. But what I do is I give them the love and the acceptance unconditionally that I felt like I missed out as a child. I think grandmama life is the best life in the world. Now, I raised my children. I love them. I was there for them. And they have, all three of the boys have at one time or another have shared with me that they felt that I was the best mom. Well, I'm the only mom they've ever known. So, you know, of course I'm going to be the best mom. But I have, since my grandchildren were born, it's a different kind of love. And you have to understand too, I had all boys, no girls. So when Anaya was born, that was the first born girl. I was just besides myself. And you already know that.
Yes.
Everywhere I could have her, she was with me.
Yes.
I still love her mother because her mom let me have her. I mean, I'm thinking Anaya was as early as a month old and her mom let me have her on the weekends. Every other weekend, that little angel was with me. And I just loved on her. Everything I thought I wanted her to have, which was in our power to do, we did. And when I say we, that's my husband and I. And you think she has me wrapped around her little finger. Papa. All she has to say is Papa, and he's like, what?
It's a done deal.
It's a done deal. So yeah, I love them, and just not with physical things, just with our presence and just with our words and with our hugs and just this weekend, I mean, she's 8 years old, but when she came into the room where I was and she laid upon my breast, I didn't push her away. I let her lay there and I stroked her back and I stroked her hair and I told her, Mimi loves you, because that's what they call me, Mimi. So I do all those kinds of things. And then, you know, there was also, I wrapped her little legs up on my lap and, you know, it may sound crazy, but, you know, and I just rocked with her and things of that nature because I want her to know she's loved.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm never too busy.
Yes, indeed. You know, there's a old song or old saying in the Christian community, I wouldn't take nothing for my journey now. If I pose that question to you, would you take anything for your journey?
No, because I've realized that my journey has made me who I am today. I don't think I would be Dr. Arnold had I not had that journey. Had I not had my adoptive father, the last words he said to me, and this is him: you go to school and get your education so you don't be beholden to nobody.
Yes, indeed.
So in other words, he said to me, I want you to go to school and get all that you can so that you will always be able to stand. And that's what I've done with God's help.
Oh, wow. It has been awesome talking to you. Now, I need you to talk to my audience members. If
Okay.
you look at this camera right over here, I want you to talk to them and I want you to tell them where they can purchase this book, all the information you can. Now, I'm going to make sure that at the end of the show that credits will roll slow enough for you guys to go out and purchase this book. It is such a good book. Tootsie's Chick, Life Without a Mother by Dorothy Arnold. So tell them where they can get the book.
You can get the book at Amazon.com, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold. But more importantly, I think that the book was written so that I can minister to hurting women and men as well who may have found themselves without their parents. And so I am willing to come and speak to youth groups, to churches, and I will bring my books along and they will be available for sale, and I will authorize, I will do my signature in the book.
Yes, you will. You'll autograph.
Autograph, yeah. Couldn't get that word. Autograph the books personally for you.
Yes.
You may contact me at www.tootsieschick@gmail.com.
That is awesome, and you are awesome, and I love you to death.
Thank you. I love you too.
You take care.
Thank you.
Hi, ladies.
Hello.
And welcome back. Welcome back. And we have a new panelist to welcome to the show today. Miss Betty, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Oh, excellent, excellent. It's wonderful to have you. Now, ladies, we have a great show for tonight. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite books that's out there. It's called Tootsie's Chick by Dorothy Arnold. And I had an opportunity to talk with the author and read portions of the book, so I'm excited about it. Now, we're not going to have a book study, don't get me wrong, but there were some themes that were in this book that really just touched my spirit and I thought would be a wonderful discussion for tonight. For instance, as I was reading the book, there's a young child in there, and the child is growing up without a parent. One of the things is that she finds herself being raised by relatives. And there is a fair amount of verbal abuse in the book. And the author pointed this out to me in our dialogue about the book. However, as I started reading the book, and I'm not demeaning, putting down her experience at all, because her experience was what it was and it impacted her, I found myself saying, where is the verbal
Right, okay.
Where is the verbal abuse? Because in my household, a lot of those things were just common everyday phrases. How about for you guys?
Pretty much the same thing. My mother has always been quite harsh with words. And I guess at times I find myself to be the same way. I was telling the ladies earlier that one of the things my mom used to tell me is, well, you a picky po heifer. And I am quite picky, you know. I don't think I'm po, but you know, I'm picky. I mean, I won't say she necessarily said it to like make me whatever, but you know, that was just her, one of her terms. And some other things that she said that would be quite hurtful, and she still will say right now today, you know. So I think that's one of the things, especially with, I guess, that generation, because my mother is in her 70s. And those were just some of the things that they did and said. I don't know if they necessarily meant to tear us down. I don't think they knew the effect of words at that point.
Do
It
you
was
think
just them
that's what it
expressing
was,
themselves.
that they just didn't understand the impact of their words, or were they using them like weapons that they, you know, or belts or switches, you know, the words were cut just as deeply?
Okay, I don't think that they knew the impact or even thought about the impact of what the word what it meant to us as children. My mother, on one hand, she would tell me that if I was trying to do a task, she would say, move out of the way, move out of the way. You're slow as molasses. That was the statement all the time. She would say, you're slow as molasses, and she would push me out of the way, and I might not get to finish, and I'd start feeling badly about myself that I couldn't finish anything. So I think it had a negative effect on me. So now, even today, I kind of move slowly when I'm cooking. I'm like doing things really slowly. I want to speed up, but in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm slow as molasses.
Wow, isn't that interesting? Now, parents didn't mean for it to impact, but we're saying that the words did impact. The words had an effect on us.
Truly, truly. And it's odd because, like she said, they didn't realize the impact. Like my daddy taught us, and his old saying was, if I tell you a hen dipped snuff, look under his right wing for the cup, which meant, you know, if I tell you something, it's true. But then he'd say things to you that were demeaning, but you're not supposed to take those things to heart. But you've told me everything you said is true.
Wow.
So how do I know when to put the split or the divide? Like, this part is not really true, but this part is really true. As a child, you don't know how to do that.
Right. So then, because, you know, and I think we forget sometimes, and Betty, you can jump in here as well. Okay. We forget sometimes that we children see adults as words as the gospel truth.
Exactly.
It is true. If mama said it, it has to be the truth.
That's right. I agree. And parent, like I said, my background and my experience, I come from a household with 10. 5 girls and 5 boys.
Wow.
And my mother loved to cuss. That's the only way we understood, unless she's saying an inappropriate word to us.
Right.
And so apparently that's what, and it got into us as I'm growing older. I start cussing bad because I'm used to my mom would cuss me, telling me to do stuff, and then I realized I know in that area I was a PO. We was PO living in a housing authority, and then I decided to climb this ladder. And went to college. I left home when I was 14. I went to college, and apparently I met my husband in college. And then all of a sudden, I felt like I wanted to live like the rich folks.
Okay.
I got tired of being poor. And I watched what the rich folks do all the time.
Right.
Driving nice cars, nice houses, and everything else. And I always dreamed, my goal was to do what the rich folks do. And so apparently, when I went to college, after I left college, I married my husband. And then my daughter started cussing.
Okay.
And apparently, I realized, God, I'm in a nice environment, I'm in middle class now, and I had to learn how to control my cussing. And other people tell me, Miss Jones, you don't have no other words to fit besides cussing. And I realized that was true.
Well, Betty, you're saying that your mother, she cursed at you, right?
Yes.
Okay, so was that a form of abuse, you're saying?
Yes, it was abuse. Like, Betty, go put that blank up. I said, oh, shoot.
Right.
And when she give me that look and cussing, I'm breaking my neck to put it up.
Right, okay.
So it's the principle of the matter, just some kind of the environment we live in. Like I said, I come from a household of 10. My mom got 50 grandkids. And when I tell people about my life,
Okay.
this is where I come from a household of 3 or 4 that didn't experience my life.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
it's just networking and I'm learning.
Right.
I'm still learning how to control my mouth. And sometimes we got to say, Miss Jones, cut it. It's too much information.
You know, it's so funny. You're in your 50s, but you're saying you're still unlearning what your mom taught you growing up. You know, just the impact of words. And one of the things you asked Mary, you said, was she being abusive? And you said, yes. But we didn't see it as abuse.
Right.
growing up, or did we see it as abuse?
I don't think we did. I think we were taught to think of it as abuse. I often think about, like with the Jackson 5 and, every year around this time, because, Michael Jackson's birthday just passed, they show the Jackson 5 story. Almost every black person I know goes, well, when was he abused? Because all of us got the same kind of whoopings.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. We didn't get one by the rat, but you got one by some
Right.
Kool-Aid you poured out or something you didn't eat.
The
you got
ice
the
tray
same
that was
type
left
of,
empty in
yeah,
the refrigerator.
you knew you was supposed to, or you drank the last bit of the Kool-Aid and knew it wasn't your time. You got that same whooping.
Right.
And you're going, oh, that was abuse?
Right.
Because that's just how we grew up.
That's true.
Now, is it acceptable? Because it's interesting. You were saying, Betty, that you found that your daughter was doing the same thing. Now, and you can kind of shoo me away from this question, but did you find yourself cussing your daughter as your mom did you?
Yes, definitely. And because I say it was in me, and it was hard for me. I ain't had no other words to use when she's not doing the right thing. When I tell her to do something, and I use an inappropriate term to her, and she'll, get scared. And that's my only daughter. And then my husband, he's not from the environment. He comes from a household of 5, and they live in the country part. I live in the city part. But as time passed and life changes, I realized reality TV and all these commercials coming on, and abuse is abuse. And you can, I'm just saying, I'm learning now that my mom was abusing me by cussing me or saying something inappropriate to me. And I didn't realize that when I was coming up.
Isn't this all interesting that when we look back and in retrospect, and I don't know how fair it is, how unfair it is, to look back and use the lens of today, and you would dub it as abuse. Right. But back then, it was just how, and sometimes with us, I thought we had it real good because people next door were getting it worse than we were getting it. I can recall being in the housing projects and someone pulling their child outside and beating them in the street. Mama never beat us in the street. She made it a private thing. I'm gonna whoop your butt right here, in the house. But nowadays, we consider that abusive to the degree. Oh, you were about to say?
No, I want to say maybe at a certain age you start seeing it as abuse. We can handle it up to a certain stage. So maybe the author, when I read it, she's looking, as she's telling the story, she was looking back at these things. And at that point, from, like you were stating, from 2016, looking back, oh, this happened to me. I was verbally abused. But as we're saying, these things happened to us. These words were told to us, and we didn't feel it as being an abuse.
Is it fair to look back on it and call it abuse now?
I just don't. The only reason I can say that I would say that it's not fair is simply for things like, look at the difference in the generations we have now and the generations from the past. What we considered to be, what we didn't consider to be abuse to be just proper raising, quote unquote.
Right.
We were much more respectful to our elders. We were a lot more afraid to do certain things. Now kids, even a child that likes and respects you will get smart with you, will say something that, will almost make you forget. Like, oh yeah, wait a minute, that's not my child. And they're not being disrespectful. So I think, it is a fine line sometimes between abuse and discipline, but I think those of us, I'm not saying physical abuse is, necessary, but some of us seem like it made us stronger, made us want to get in a better position.
Okay.
Whereas now, the gentleness that we, like to cascade, makes our children complacent, and we can't get them out of our houses, and we can't get them to go get jobs, and we can't, you know what I mean? And they feel like that we're equal, absolutely equal to them, and they feel like other adults are absolutely equal to them. Now again, I'm not saying it was okay for your mom to cuss you out if you feel some type of way about it. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's okay for your mom to, whatever it is that you felt like she did. But, we have to learn there has to be a happy medium. You can't just shut everything out.
Because, it's interesting. I'm listening to you as you're expounding on this. And I thought about a news story a story that hit the news recently. and there was a mom whose sons were breaking into a home. Mom found out about it. Mom took an extension cord. She beat the living daylights out of them. They arrested mom and took mom to jail. Now, there was a plethora of people who were crying out and outcry. The judge said he didn't see anything really wrong with what she did, or at least I think that's what he said. But there were literally lacerations, cuts that were bleeding. And so when we're talking about this, let's not make it small, because those whippings were huge. Anybody had a different experience than I did? Because my whippings were not gentle whippings.
Right. I remember the whippings that my brother, now I was the youngest, so I didn't really get the whippings because I was smart enough to see what they were doing and decided
Ding, ding, ding,
I
ding.
didn't want to do those. But I saw the
Exactly.
whippings that they got. My father would just grab anything that was near him, and sometimes the whips would rise up on their bodies, and it would take a few, I would say, hours, in some cases days, for those things to disappear. But today they're all gentle, you know, they're nice men. They have never been in trouble. They have the utmost respect for my father. The love is there.
But you know, the pushback that I would give to that, and what I know my audience members are thinking, I know that I've heard a lot of dialogue about that being necessary because of the time period that they were living in, and that using that amount of force does a couple of things. It's kind of, it resembles how the slave trader caused the slave to what he would do to make them obey. And then secondly, it creates a fear inside of individuals to express themselves, to be themselves fully and wholly, to be their very, very best, because they're always afraid. What would you ladies say to those kinds of arguments? Because you were saying, look at the end result, and that's what you said as well, Mary. Look at the end result.
Look at the end results. But since you said it that way, it does look, I mean, it basically was some type of physical abuse. My brothers would say, today looking back, that it was physical abuse.
Would you do the same thing to your children?
Oh, no.
I whooped my daughter. I mean, not now, but I did when she was, you know, she's 20 now.
To the same extent your mama whooped you?
Well, I didn't do the stuff my daughter did. I was smart enough to see how my sister got whooped, and I didn't do the, you know, the stuff that she did. But yeah, I mean, yes. Now don't get me wrong. I can't sit here and tell you that, oh God, I had to be wrapped up and, you know, wear jogging pants for a week. I didn't get that kind of whooping, but I did get whoopings when I did something. You know, I don't think my mother abused me or my father abused me. I think I just got whoopings.
Right.
You said that sometimes it forces you not to be who you would be. Sometimes who you would be without those whoopings is god awful and in jail and possibly dead.
And I think that's what parents were thinking. However, my audience members who don't discipline their children in that manner say that there is a more excellent way. Is there a more excellent way? The Bible says, spare the rod and spoil the child. Does that necessarily mean that sparing the rod means that we're going to use physical punishment? Is there a more excellent way? Is there an in-between? Ladies, talk to me and help my people who are out there trying to figure this out.
I don't necessarily think every behavior deserves a whooping or a spanking. I'm not saying that by any means that I believe that, but I do believe there are some instances where that is, you know, just like we teach school here. Okay, you have tiers. Okay, first behavior, you have a conference with the child, you talk. Second behavior, you know, you move the seat. Third behavior, you know, you call the parent. And for, you know, the highest tier is an administrator. Okay, so no, every time a child does something, should you get out of bed or a stick or whatever it is that you spank your child with? No. You know, a child does something, you say, no, you know, sweetheart, that's not what you do. That is hot. It will hurt you. You know, you repeat
Let me
that.
just interrupt you for just a second in your flow, just a second, Natalie. Some people would argue that if you use corporal punishment all the time, that is the only thing that children understand.
And that's why I'm saying I
hold on
don't think you
just a
should use it
second.
all the time.
Yeah, that even if that is your extreme, that's in extreme, that's what they begin to understand, and that it is almost a cheat for you as a parent to resort to the physical punishment, the verbal punishment of your children, rather than, I mean, the verbal abuse of your children, rather than going through the more extreme method of, you know, you may take something away. That takes a lot of time. Sometimes it's easier to pick up the house shoe and wear out the behind and put you in the corner. Would you see that, Mary, as a legitimate argument?
I think there's different levels of discipline your child. So yes, the physical or the strength, the whippings that we were talking about, I think that's to the extreme. I really do think that's to the extreme.
Do you use corporal punishment?
No.
You do not. And I
Well,
think,
no,
no,
okay,
no,
let's
I
look
don't
at-
think you should be indicted for that.
Okay.
I don't think you should be indicted for that. I did use corporal punishment, but it was minimum. I think I can count on one hand the amount of whippings that my child got, and it was you lay across the bed and let me whack you a couple of times, you get up, and that's all it took for her. And I'm not indicting you, and it's interesting that when I talk to African American moms who don't use corporal punishment, they kind of get this kind of look on their face as though they have to defend themselves. What we're looking at is extremes.
Right.
And I'm not saying one is better than the other, we're just having dialogue.
Right.
So you
Right.
were saying that for you, there is this hierarchy according to what you've done.
Right.
Right? But for you, you didn't use corporal punishment. Talk to us about the why of that.
Well, being that I witnessed what happened with my brothers, I saw that there again, as you make the statement that sometimes they withdraw into themselves, they might have been afraid of my father to do some things. So they weren't, I think that their personality wasn't fully expressive because they had that fear there. So with my children, I wanted them to be expressive in a decent way, Natalie, okay? I wanted them to be expressive and not afraid of me. So their actions, with their actions, there were consequences. So there again, it would be like, okay, you can't watch television this week. You can't talk on the phone this week. So when I took some things from them, then they acted right, I think.
Well, I mean, they're absolutely beautiful, gorgeous, respectful adults. So there is something to be said, and I think something that we possibly need to explore. And Natalie, and I hear you, and Betty, I want to get your feedback on this.
Okay, apparently, I guess I come from a different environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
As a teacher for 28 years, they always tended to put me in a low-income school, low income. And I realized just observing that these kids that they don't need to be abused, but they need to be talking to, because you never know what type of kid, what kind of background they come from. They've been abused so much at their home, and then they come to the school system. So each child when we get in the school system is different. Because I know I can tell one little boy, you better sit your little butt down. And he sat down. But this little Johnny here, you please sit down, cutie, and she sat down. So it just treat them different. And everybody say, Miss Jones, I'm strongly a believer of discipline. That's my methods of discipline, control, organized. But I know how to handle my kids, and apparently that's the one thing I observe them, and I read their background, where they come from, and I know how to treat them. And I know that mom ain't gonna come up there and jump on my butt, because I know that, and I know this mom ain't gonna come, because I treat all of them different as discipline-wise. And so, and I look at that, and I learned from my mistake when I was home. My mom was just cussing me out, but when I left home at the age of 15, I went with this lady, my mama's boyfriend, sister, nice home, nice Mercedes, clean house, and I learned from that. And she would treat me so, oh, this is your room. I never had it in my own room. I was sleeping with my brothers and sisters in one bed. So I felt so comfortable with that, and I didn't want to go back home, because this lady treated me like I was supposed to be treated. And when I went back home, come home, and it's not projects no more, y'all. It's called Housing Authority. So they got a new name for it, so they correct me in the little town. It's just in the project, Housing Authority, so they built it up. So I said, okay, the Housing Authority. So when I go home, just to visit on weekends, and my mama cooked, in New Orleans, we love red beans and rice. My mama just cooked the red beans and rice, and I give her that eating to feed all 10 of us. Mama, can I have second? No, Melvin ain't ate, Gilbert ain't ate, all my little brothers and sisters ain't ate. So I had to wait about 3 or 4 hours before I get seconds. When I go get second, the food be gone.
Right.
So I come from that po environment. And when I do decide to get a little bit, I brace it, I watch my blessings, and keep on moving. If I don't have a penny, I'm still happy.
So you were introduced to another way of life.
Yes.
And even another way of discipline
Yes.
through these other families.
That's
You
right,
know,
definitely.
one of the things when we look at the book Tootsie's Chick, the character experiences this sense of abandonment. My goodness, within the course of a couple of weeks, her mom passes away, and then her grandmom passes away. And then her grandfather, even though he's there, he loses his mind. And the man that she once knew is no longer there. So we watch this character as they feel alone, you know, and we start thinking about this abandonment and parents being attentive in the home, because you can be there and not be there. Right. You know, and we're not just talking about with a mental disorder. We're talking about parents who are active in their minds and you know, they're in their right minds. But how important for you is it to make your children feel, or have you paid special attention to make sure your children feel wanted and a part of the family? And did you feel that way as a child?
Well, I try to make sure my children feel very secure. I'm like a mother duckling. They're walking behind me from day one. I don't think they ever felt abandoned or felt that they were going to be abandoned, because they were just always there and secure. But me as a young girl growing up, I was raised by my grandmother because my mother was very sick. And my grandmother raised me for until I started first or second grade. And I guess I had a sense of abandonment because my mother kept the other kids, but yet she let my grandmother raise me. And I'm not as close, or I wasn't as close to my mother as the other children. I always wondered why. So I could relate.
Mary, what was it, and I'm going to ask you as well, Natalie and Betty, what was the impact of your mom's rearing in advice or non-advice about sexuality on you as an adult? And then what do you tell your daughters?
Oh, I'll just answer this. Me and my daughters, I just told them the truth, because I could see immediately the flaw in her telling me that. She didn't tell me the entire story. There was more to just a boy touching me. I had to find all of that from my friends. And later on, I would go to, because I have this inquisitive mind, I would go to the library and I read on it. I would read different things, and I found all about my menstrual cycle and what boys have, how their body's different than the female body. So once I learned that, and I knew how everything operated, then of course I didn't let a boy touch me. Basically the serious touch until later, 20s maybe. But basically what I tell my daughters is the truth immediately. What they need to know about sexuality. You got to be honest with your children. You just have to.
I do agree with Mary completely on that. Now my mother, like I said, sex was not a topic, but now she gave moral advice. Don't be the only girl standing around a group full of boys.
Right.
That looks bad.
Okay.
You know, make sure, even though it was just look stuff like that, you know, don't be fast. You don't never want anybody to say you the fast girl.
Right.
But you didn't know what fast meant. Did that mean running? Did that mean, you know what I'm saying? Nobody ever told you, don't be fast. Okay, so I'm not fast. What am I?
Right.
I'm gonna move slow. What? Fast
Slow,
at what?
Slow got you pregnant.
Okay. It
Tootsie's Chick by Dorothy Arnold. Read the book. It is such a good read. You're going to enjoy it. And like I said, some of the themes, ladies, but what I really appreciate from you is that even though you've had these experiences, when you look back on them and you look through the eyes of maturity and you look through the eyes of Christ, that there's a softer hue to it. You know, we can go back and we can dig into the past and, you know, kind of sort through them and say, ooh, this is a bad one, this was a good one. But for all of you, you've looked at them, you've kind of flipped them over, and you've found the good, because each of you have developed to be beautiful women and beautiful mothers as well. So I thank you guys for discussing this with me and for just being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Tootsie's Chick by Dr. Dorothy Arnold. Wonderful book. I cannot tell you enough to go out and buy this book. It's going to cause you pause. It's going to cause you to think about your situation, to cause you to think about your journey from childhood to adulthood. But I implore you, as you begin to venture on this quest, that you take along with you the lens of forgiveness. Oftentimes, our parents or those who raised us did what they did because they were limited in scope. They couldn't see far enough. They couldn't see beyond their own situations or their own pains. They were limited in finances, limited in resources, oftentimes limited in their ability to love us the way that we should have been loved. There are times when words may have been said and deeds may have been done that have caused you pain. But if you look through the lens of forgiveness, and part of this lens means that you look at yourself first. Look at all the times you've stumbled. Look at all the times you've fallen. God still loves you. If you look back through that lens, it becomes a lot easier to forgive. Please understand that forgiveness is never about the other person. Forgiveness is about you. It's about being released from your past, released from your pain. God gives us that option to let it go, to move on, as Dr. Dorothy Arnold did in her life to become who she is. Go through it, look at it, examine it. You may even want to write a book. But as an end result, place it behind you. I believe that it was the Apostle Paul that says, I'm forgetting those things that are behind, and I'm pressing towards the mark of a higher calling, which is in Christ Jesus, our Lord. Press forward. And join us for next week's show. It's bound to be a good one, steeped in the word of the Lord. See you next week.